So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spy Knight, and in these podcasts, I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm continuing on with my Harry Potter film reviews, as I'm reviewing the 6th film in the Harry Potter film series, which is, of course, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcast on Spotify, well, even look, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify, that's Night of the Movies on that platform, and if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners. Then you can also check this podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course. And please leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there are always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. Also, I should say, just before I get into my review of this film, that I have this thing I like to call fuzzy thinking today, as I went swimming earlier today. So if I, at any point in this podcast, say something that doesn't totally make sense and I don't go back and correct myself, or if for any reason I lose my train of thought, that's why. It's because I've got fuzzy thinking today after going swimming earlier in the day. Because when you go swimming earlier in the day, it just affects the way you think. You know, it just does. But I'm going to push through with this. I'm going to push through with this podcast no matter what, and my review of this film. So let's get into it, shall we? My review of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I had to check my notes there to make sure I got the title correct, as I almost forgot it. That's the state of my brain right now. Anyway, let's get into it. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So this is the 6th film, as I've already said, in the Harry Potter film franchise, and the second film in this franchise to be directed by David Yates. David Yates, who previously directed the 5th film, which was Order of the Phoenix, and also would later go on to direct the last 2 Harry Potter movies, as well as all 3 Fantastic Beasts films. And because of that, because this film is directed by David Yates, I wasn't that excited to see it, because I didn't really like the predecessor. I didn't really like Order of the Phoenix, and one of the things I really didn't like about it was the directing. It felt like it had this generic filmmaking in there. Nothing in the storytelling was exciting, and I did not think David Yates did a good job making that film. I was longing for the direction of the previous 2 Harry Potter movies, Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire, whilst watching Order of the Phoenix. But I am watching these films right now, hence why, I'm reviewing them on this channel, because I've spoke about this before, and pretty much all my Harry Potter film reviews, the reason I'm doing these reviews is because it's like I'm watching them for the first time. I have seen these films, a long time ago, but I don't remember much about them, which is why I'm talking about them on the channel, because it's like I'm watching them for the first time, so it's like I'm giving my thoughts on them as I watch them for the first time. And because of that, I knew I would have to watch this film. I knew that the time would eventually come. The time eventually came last night when I set aside some time to check out this film. Even so, I really wasn't that excited about it, because I knew it was directed by David Yates. I was like, give it a go, it should at least be watchable. It should at least be okay to get through. And after watching the film last night, here are my thoughts on it. Here are my thoughts on the 6th Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Honestly, I enjoyed this film. I thought it was fun to watch, and it brought back that feeling of the first 4 Harry Potter movies, the feeling I was missing from Order of the Phoenix, the feeling of just being in Hogwarts with these characters, and this feeling of this sort of magical feeling. And the reason I'm saying sort of there is because I don't find these films that magical to watch the same way I feel whenever I watch a Lord of the Rings film. It feels like the magic is coming off the screen, or the same with the Star Wars movie, and I don't quite get that from the Harry Potter films. But at the same time, there was a feeling of magic coming off the screen, not as much as I said before, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars film, but there was a feeling of magic and a feeling of joy coming off the screen whilst I was watching this film. Something I didn't get from Order of the Phoenix, and something I did get from the first four Harry Potter movies. I didn't totally realise I got from those first four films, and then I realised how much I miss in the fifth film, and then get to the sixth film and it's back. That's what it felt like. It felt like it was back because the filmmaking was more confident, in my opinion. It did feel a little like David Yates had somehow watched my view of Order of the Phoenix, which doesn't make any sense because this film was made, in 2008, and, so it doesn't make any sense what I'm saying, really, but I'm going to say it anyway. It does feel a little like David Yates watched my view of Order of the Phoenix and tried to improve as much as he could with the directing. I still don't think this is a well-directed film. I think the best directed of the Harry Potter movies will probably end up being Prisoner of Azkaban, because that's from Alfonso Cuarón, who is a visionary filmmaker. He's an Academy Award nominated director. He maybe even won an Academy Award. And I think the second best directed film in the Harry Potter film franchise is Goblet of Fire. But this, I would say that it's better directed maybe than the first film, and maybe even than the second film. I didn't think the direction was bad in this film. I thought it was decent. I thought it was good. It had enough good filmmaking and enough good storytelling in David Yates' direction that I was able to actually get into it and actually enjoy what I was watching on screen instead of it just feeling dull. Order of the Phoenix felt dull, whilst this film, literally from the get-go, I was like, oh, you can tell David Yates is more confident now. This is his second film in this franchise. You can tell he's got more experience, and he's trying to throw the viewers into the film. I don't know if he totally succeeds, but you can see that he's trying. And yeah, I thought the filmmaking was a lot better overall, particularly with the Quidditch game sequence, because, well, there's actually two Quidditch game sequences, if I remember correctly. Yeah, there's two Quidditch game sequences in this film, and that was nice to see, because we haven't seen a Quidditch game sequence properly since Prisoner of Azkaban. You see the Quidditch World Cup, if I remember correctly, in Goblet of Fire, but there was no Quidditch in Order of the Phoenix, which was frustrating, because I quite like the Quidditch stuff in these movies, and I wanted to see how David Yates approached the Quidditch stuff, and I didn't remember if there was any Quidditch stuff from any of the films past Goblet of Fire, and so when that popped up in this film, it was a nice surprise. It was a nice surprise, and I thought the Quidditch stuff was well done. It was well directed. I mean, it wasn't as well directed as Alfonso Cuarón directed the Quidditch stuff in Prisoner of Azkaban. Honestly, I remember watching the Quidditch stuff in Prisoner of Azkaban, it was quite a mind-boggling experience, because I was like, what is CGI here? What isn't? I can't tell, and in the best way possible. I didn't quite get that from the Quidditch stuff in this film. There was a couple of moments during the Quidditch stuff I was like, yeah, that's clearly CGI, but it was decent direction for the Quidditch stuff, and I like seeing that Quidditch was back in this film, and I even liked that Ron was part of the Quidditch team, because if I remember correctly, again, my brain's a bit fuzzy today, as already spoken about, because I went swimming early today because of that. So yeah, I can't remember certain here, but didn't they hint at that in Philosopher's Stone with the mirror scene? I'm pretty sure they hinted that Ron would eventually be part of the Quidditch team, and he is here, and I liked the way that they incorporated that into the story, and sticking on with the characters, sticking on with the main characters. This film made me realise how much I was invested into the main characters, and how much I actually enjoy watching these actors play their characters. I didn't quite realise that until this film. I didn't realise it with Order of the Phoenix, but this film made me realise that. I'm not totally sure how it did. Maybe it's because I actually found their storylines compelling in this film and engaging to watch. This was the first Harry Potter movie which really focused on the characters' relationships, really focused on the characters' romantic relationships at that. You start to see the romance between Harry and Ginny blossom. Same with Hermione and Ron, and even so, you don't really see either of those couples fully go into their romance, if you follow my thinking. You see their romance start to blossom, and yeah, some of that was cringy, but also it made sense in the grand scheme of things in this overall story of Harry Potter, because we're on the sixth film now, and I knew at some point, because the franchise is kind of famous for that Harry and Ron, it's kind of famous for this, that Harry and Ron got together, and I knew that not Harry and Ron, that doesn't make sense. No, that Hermione and Ron got together, and that Harry and Ginny did. But I wasn't sure where it was going to happen, and this film was the first time you saw it happen, and it made me realise how much I actually have invested into these characters, because those watching these characters and watching these actors play the characters and watching them just as school children, what felt like one last time. I don't really remember if it's one last time. I don't even remember if you see Hogwarts again in the later movies. I have seen the later movies, but again, not for yonks. I barely remember anything about the final two films, particularly Deathly Hallows Part 1. I barely remember anything about it. So yeah, I don't actually remember if you get to see them as school kids again, but this was the last time where it felt like you got to see them as school kids, and I thought because of that it was an enjoyable watch, because you saw them still have fun with one another, something you didn't really see in Order of the Phoenix. And there's some there's some dog barking outside, which is slightly distracting me right now. So I've lost my train of thought. No, I haven't lost my train of thought. Yeah, I was just enjoying watching these characters have some fun and, you know, go through their adolescent years. I thought that was actually quite entertaining to watch, and seeing these actors play these characters. You know, Daniel Radcliffe, I thought he was great in this film. I actually thought it was much better in this film than he was in Order of the Phoenix. I didn't think he was great in Order of the Phoenix. Whilst in this film, he felt, I don't know, like he was having more fun playing this character. Same with the other main cast members, whether it was Emma Watson as Hermione Granger, Rupert Grint as Ron Weasley. It felt, I really enjoyed watching these actors play the characters, and I really enjoyed watching the characters in this film, especially what's his name, Tom Felton, I think that's his name, as Draco Malfoy. I really like the Draco Malfoy story in this film. I found that to be the most compelling part of the film, because he's being summoned by the Dark Lord because of his parents. His parents are Lucius Malfoy, and I forgot what his mother's called, but his mother was played by Helen McCrory. And side note here, I didn't really know that Helen McCrory was in this film. I don't remember her actually. I didn't remember she was in the Harry Potter movies, although as soon as she was on screen, I was like, oh, she is in these films, because I remember when she sadly passed away, I think it was last year, Jason Isaacs, who plays her partner in these films, he wasn't in this film, but I'm assuming he's in one of the later movies, put out this lovely message about her on Instagram when she passed away. And I really like Helen McCrory, you know, because she was in Peaky Blinders, and I didn't love Peaky Blinders overall, but she was one of the best characters in there. And so when she popped up in this film, it wasn't a big role, but, you know, it's like, oh, I forgot that you're even in this franchise at all, and you know, it's great to see you there. So anyway, you see Draco Malfoy, going back onto what I was saying, you see Draco Malfoy being told he's been ordered to kill Dumbledore, and that storyline where you really see what Draco Malfoy is like as a character. You really get to see that character at this point in the story, how he wants to become evil because that's the path his parents have been leading him on. But you also see that he's not that person though. He's not like his parents. He's not like other wizards and witches like Bellatrix Lestrange or Voldemort, who are part of the Dark Lords, whatever they call it, the bad guys. You know what I mean? He isn't like them. He's scared of fully committing to the bad side, to the dark side, if you want to use a Star Wars term. He's scared of fully committing to them, and that storyline really showed that, and I thought Tom Felton played it very well, and I loved the way that storyline was shot, because it felt like something out of a horror movie at times, with the way it looked, particularly when there was one scene when Draco Malfoy was leaning over the was leaning over, what am I trying to think of? Was leaning over, I can't think of words today. He was in the bathroom and he was leaning over the sink. That's the word I was trying to think of, the sink there. He was leaning over the sink and Harry is watching him, and then they have this small mini battle in the toilet. Yeah, I liked the way that scene was shot a lot. And sticking on with the way this film looked, visually this may be the most beautiful Harry Potter movie yet. The cinematography, I've even got the cinematographer down in my notes. What's their name? Bruno Del Bono. I must admit, I'm not familiar with them as a cinematographer. I haven't come across their name before, unlike say Roger Deakins or Greg Fraser. I haven't come across Bruno Del Bono before, but their cinematography was mesmerising at times. This was a beautifully shot film and actually visually engaging. Unlike the other movie, unlike the last film, I don't know if it had the same cinematographer, but the last film was not visually engaging. Whilst this film has some cinematography, I'm like, wow, this is from a Harry Potter film. I mean, I didn't think I'd get cinematography like this in a David Yates film, and then a David Yates Harry Potter film, or a David Yates Wizarding film. At that, I thought this was a gorgeously shot film, and I loved the way it looked. And Dumbledore's death. Spoiler here, in case you haven't seen these movies, Dumbledore's death I thought was done remarkably well. I did remember that he died at some point. I think I remembered halfway through watching, it was either Goblet of Fire or Order of the Phoenix. Oh yeah, Dumbledore dies at some point. He dies by Snape, doesn't he? I love the way that was done. It was so well done, actually, to the point that that was my favourite part of the film. Seems to be a little bit of a recurring thing. I didn't really like the ending of Order of the Phoenix, but I loved the ending to Goblet of Fire with Voldemort's introduction. I loved the ending to this film where you see Draco wants to kill. He wants to fulfill his orders to kill Dumbledore, but then Snape steps in at his last minute and kills him. And then you see these dark lords, the dark wizards and witches taking over and destroying Hogwarts. You see Bellatrix Lestrange go through the Hogwarts Hall and destroy everything and destroy the glass. And by the way, you can tell that Helena Carter is having the time of her life playing this character, especially in those final sequences. And then they go through the woods and Harry is chasing after them and he faces off against Snape, and I thought that whole finale was brilliant. The film itself wasn't brilliant, but the finale saved the film for me, because the film I found to be fairly entertaining. I enjoyed watching it. I didn't really enjoy watching it, but I found it to be fairly entertaining. But the finale sold it for me, because when you get a film that's just mediocre, kind of like this film is for me, a film that, isn't great but isn't bad at the same time, when you get a film that, is fairly entertaining, as I've already said, an ending can make it or break it. It can make the film worthwhile, or it can make it feel underwhelming. And the ending to Order of the Phoenix made that film underwhelming for me. But the ending to this film made this film feel worthwhile. I got to the ending and I was like, yes. That's just made the film worthwhile and worth watching, and actually made it a much better experience than I thought it would be. Because I still found this film to be set up. One of my big problems with Order of the Phoenix was that it felt set up. It felt like a setup for the next 3 Harry Potter movies, for the final 3 Harry Potter films. And this film felt like setup as well. But the difference here is it didn't feel just like setup, like Order of the Phoenix did. For me, again, trying to emphasise, it's my opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. If you loved Order of the Phoenix, that's great. I don't want to take it away from you. But for me, that film felt like just complete setup and didn't feel complete in its story overall. Whilst this film, yes, it did feel like setup and it did have a somewhat incomplete story, but I didn't mind the setup so much because it was entertaining. This film had some comedy in there and had these dark moments too, which delivered on, and it felt like it was setting up what will hopefully be 2 good final films. I'm really hoping the final 2 films of this franchise fully deliver, because I don't remember if they did. I really don't remember, if I'm being completely honest, and this was a long time ago since I've seen Deathly Hallows Part 2, but I don't remember coming out of the cinema loving that film. But, been a long time since I saw it, so I have to wait on my opinion on that over the next couple of weeks, whenever I get around to reviewing that film. But anyway, go back onto what I was saying. The setup here didn't bother me because, like I said, I enjoyed watching it. I found it to be fun, and it felt like it remembered that the Harry Potter movies had to have this joy in them. Had to have this feeling of magic with them. It had to try and be magical. This film felt like that, and it felt like that because it had these comedic moments sprinkled throughout it. Like you see that the Weasley twins have now opened their own sweet store in this film, and Ron, who is, the brother to the Weasley twins, is asking if he can get this jar of sweets half price, and he's saying, and then they go, no, 5 gallons. I think that's the price they say in the film. And he says, no, 5 gallons. And then one's like, but I'm your brother. Okay, 10 gallons. That part made me laugh quite a bit, particularly because I got brothers myself. And also, there was other funny moments throughout the film, like when you saw Harry take this potion to try and get to talk to Slugworth. Professor Slugworth, I think that's what the character's called, played wonderfully by Jim Broadbent in this film. I'll get onto Jim Broadbent a bit later in this review. But when you saw him take this potion to go and talk to Slugworth, and he's like, I'm going to go down to Hagrid's. I just got a good feeling about that. You know what I mean? He says that to Ron and Hermione, and they both go, no. That made me laugh. There was more funny moments in this film than I was expecting. And I think a Harry Potter movie needs comedy. It needs to have those funny moments. And I felt Order of the Phoenix lacked that. But the previous 4 movies didn't. And that's another reason I found this film to be, more enjoyable than the last film. Because it felt like it remembered to be a Harry Potter movie. That's the thing in the end. I can't believe I haven't said that yet. I can't believe I haven't reached that destination yet. This film felt like it remembered to be a Harry Potter film. And I mean that in the best way possible. I still don't think it's the best Harry Potter movie, but I still don't think it's great overall. But it felt like it remembered to be a Harry Potter film. And going back into what I just said, I don't think it's great overall, though. And the reason is because I feel this film could have been better. This film felt like The Calm Before the Storm, which I think I put in the title of this podcast today. This film felt like The Calm Before the Storm, before the Wizarding Wars, and the Wizarding battles, which I'm sure are going to happen in the next 2 movies. But I felt like it could have been more. I felt like it could have felt like more of The Calm Before the Storm. What do you mean by that? Is you could have been cutting between Harry and his friends at Hogwarts and Voldemort building up his army throughout the film. And you get a bit of that at the start of the film. You see that the Dark Lords are trying to recruit Snape to make sure Draco kills Dumbledore. You see that early on in the film. But I would have liked to see it throughout the film. I would have liked there to be cutting back and forth between the good guys and the bad guys. Whilst this film felt like it was focusing more on the good guys, and in doing so had some inconsequential storylines in my opinion, such as Ron getting his first girlfriend. At least I think it's his first girlfriend. I don't think he's had a girlfriend in this film series so far. Yeah, when you see Ron get his first girlfriend, I didn't think that was executed particularly well. I didn't find it that fun to watch, and I felt it was inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. But if you took that storyline out and actually had some appearances from Voldemort throughout this film, because he's not in this film at all, you don't see Voldemort at all in this film. If you had more appearances from him, or had people, building up his army throughout the film, having it cutting back and forth between those 2 storylines, I felt it could have been a more compelling and more engaging watch, and an overall more satisfying watch. Because I didn't get that at the end of this film. At the end of this film, I understood that that Voldemort's army was almost complete. That's what I was kind of grasping from the end of the film. But I wanted to feel like I wanted to see his army. I wanted to see his army. I don't really like this film that much. I've got big problems with it. And it's my least favourite Star Wars movie. But like at the end of Attack of the Clones, when you see all the clones in an army and John Williams' Imperial March plays in the background, it's my favourite part of that film by a mile, because it sets up the third film, and it sets up the Empire going forth with that franchise if you watch it in chronological order. And I wanted something like that from this film. And I understand that may not happen in the books, but I don't care. I haven't read the books, and films don't always have to follow the books, There's a reason the word adaptation exists. There's a reason a film isn't a book, and there's a reason a book isn't a film. I felt it could have been more engaging, more compelling if you were cutting back and forth between those 2 storylines and actually showing how both sides are operating at the moment. Because you get the idea that the Dark Lords and that the bad guys are building up an army, but you don't see it. To the point they don't even see Voldemort in this film, and that's another criticism I had. The next 2 Harry Potter films better use Voldemort a lot. You better have him as as the main antagonist, as a huge presence, and have him with at least some substantial screen time. Because at the moment, I am missing Wayfinder's Voldemort. Because he was so good in his introduction to Goblet of Fire. He was barely in Order of the Phoenix, although he was good in that. But he wasn't in this film at all. And it did bother me that, because like you've got him, you've got the best casting for this villain. He plays him perfectly. And every time he's on screen, I'm drawn to him. But you're not having him on screen that much. He's not been on screen. At least Ray Fiennes as Voldemort hasn't been on screen that much in this franchise so far, up to the point I am at. So the next two films better have him on the screen at least for half an hour, in my opinion. I don't know how long the next two films are, but I'm imagining they're about 2.5 hours each. He better be on screen for at least, and I mean at least, half an hour for both of those films. An hour for both of those films combined. You know, I want to see more of Ray Fiennes' Voldemort. And I did feel it was a misstep not having him in this film. And totally, I did think this film was a little all over the place too. I didn't think the tonal changes were bad. I'm not saying that. But I also felt that maybe this film could have felt... I mean, I was about to say maybe this film could have been darker. But actually, I like the comedic stuff. Still, it felt a little tonally inconsistent with the last film. Like, Harry, throughout the last movie, seems like he's going through some trauma. And then, if people remember, he loses his fatherly figure, Sirius Black, at the end of the last film. And this film felt like he didn't really go into that. And I thought it was going to. I was surprised by the tone they went for. And I liked the tone they went for. But in the grand scheme of things, when I finish this franchise in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to... It's going to be interesting to see how I think about this film overall alongside the other movies in this film series, because I'm not sure the tone totally worked. With that all being said though, this film did feel like a breath of fresh air after the last film. It felt like a return to Hogwarts. It felt like we were cooking with gas again, especially when you get to the end. You know, get to the end, I was like, yeah, we're really cooking with gas. But not just the end, actually. Plenty of other moments in the film. And, you know, this was the first Harry Potter movie that had Jim Broadbent as Professor Slugworth. Again, I think that's what the character's called. I'm not totally sure. But I love that he was in this film. Because I love Jim Broadbent. I must admit, every time he was on screen, every time I was on screen in the first hour of the film, because of his voice, and his voice is used in the Kevin the Carrot Audi adverts around Christmas, if people have seen them. Because of his voice, and he's got that distinctive voice, that's all I could think about, the Kevin the Carrot Christmas adverts whenever he was on screen in the first hour. I got past that though, and yeah, I really enjoyed watching that character. And I liked the part he played in the story too, and I love the way it was introduced. You know, you go into this house which looks like it's been abandoned, and he's hiding in this chair, and then they just completely fixed the house. And yeah, I really liked all that, and his storyline, how he knew Tom Riddle, all that sort of stuff, I thought was quite compelling to watch. It was somewhat interesting. I'm not going to say it was completely compelling, but I liked it. Also, like I've already mentioned, Helena Carter's Bellatrix Retrained. You can tell she's having the time of her life playing that character. And I liked seeing Hagrid back. Hagrid felt like, I don't even know if he did, but he felt like he had a bigger role in this film. And you even got this reference to Chamber of Secrets. You know, Aragog the spider from Chamber of Secrets. You see Hagrid giving him a memorial in this film. And I liked all that sort of stuff because it worked. It worked for me. You know, it worked for me. As did the musical score by Nicholas Hooper, which I thought was sweet to listen to. It was a nice musical score. Still, on the topic of the musical score, and I'm going to ramble on about this a little bit, so bear with me. I am missing John Williams' musical scores from the first three Harry Potter movies. I'm missing them so much at this point in the franchise. Because even so I don't think Patrick Doyle, who did the music for Goblet of Fire, or Nicholas Hooper did the music for this film and Order of the Phoenix, did a bad job. they're not John Williams. I know many composers are, but still, they're not John Williams. And the thing is about John Williams, you can listen to his scores and they tell a story within themselves. You can listen to his scores outside of the Harry Potter movies and they tell the story of those films without, and you don't have to watch the film to understand them. You know, because like I've already mentioned about 1,000 times, I haven't seen these Harry Potter films in yonks, but I was listening to the scores a lot over the past couple of years. In fact, it was musical scores which actually were the number one thing which made me want to watch these films, because I wanted to know how the scores fit with the films, because I'd listened to the scores for the first 3 Harry Potter movies so much because I listened to John Williams daily. Literally before this podcast today, I've listened to a bit of Jurassic Park music, you know, so I listen to John Williams scores daily, and I listen to the Harry Potter music a lot, his music for the Harry Potter films a lot over the past couple of years, and I didn't need to watch the films though to understand the music. The music told a story in itself, and something that I really come to notice that since watching Philosopher's Stone, Chamber of Secrets and Prison of Azkaban, the films John Williams did the music for in the Harry Potter film series, since watching those films I've gone back and listened to John Williams' Harry Potter scores, and they've taken me back to the visuals of those films. Even so, I don't have the same fondness for these films as I do for the Star Wars movies or the Lord of the Rings films. Like when I listen to a piece of Star Wars music, it instantly takes me back to Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. When I listen to a piece of Lord of the Rings music, it instantly takes me back to the Shire or Mordor. And the music doesn't do that as much, but that's just because I don't love the films as much. But still, I can listen to the music and it takes me back to this film series. So it takes me back to the visuals and the most memorable moments. But I can't do that with Patrick Doyle's score for Goblet of Fire or Nicholas Hooper's score for Order of the Phoenix or Half-Blood Prince, you know, this film. I can't do that with the scores, and I have tried it. I have tried listening to the scores and I'm like, just doesn't have that John Williams touch. I thought it was such a missed opportunity and such a miss that they let him go after Prison of Azkaban, arguably his best Harry Potter score. And I understand why. He was very busy in composing a lot of movies in 2005, but I wonder how better this film would have been if it had music composed by John Williams. And I know David Yates, he's spoken about this, he wants to get John Williams back for the final 2 Harry Potter movies, but they just couldn't fit him in with the schedule. But still, it's like the score for these last 3 Harry Potter movies, even so I really, really like Goblet of Fire and I enjoyed this film, the scores don't have that same feel and they don't tell a story in themselves, and you can't listen to the scores and be taken back to the movies, at least for me, because the John Williams scores for the first 3 Harry Potter movies had that though. They had that in buckets of spades. That doesn't make any sense. In spades, you know, that's what I'm going to say there. They had that in spades, but the music for this film didn't. You know, that's why I'm a bit salty about John Williams leaving this franchise, because I do sometimes wonder, as I'm watching this franchise right now as well, in particular, I do sometimes wonder how much better these films would have been if John Williams stayed on to compose. And we're never going to get the answer because he didn't. But I don't know. I think there could have been something really special if he did compose them. Because I've got nothing against Patrick Doyle as a composer or Nicholas Hooper as a composer. I don't really know their work, if I'm being completely frank. But they're not John Williams. And, you know, I think that's a shame. Because the music could really have done something special with this film, and it's not bad. The musical score for this film adds some levity to the film, and I think it works in the context of the film, you know, works alongside many scenes, particularly with the ending, but again, it's not John Williams. That's probably the last time I'll say that. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping the scores for the next 2 Harry Potter movies really bring it home, you know? At least remind me of the feel of the first 2 Harry Potter movies. I'm really hoping, I don't know who composed the music for the next 2 films. I've got a feeling it's James Newton Howard, who I've been a bit hit or miss on myself. But I've got a feeling it's James Newton Howard. So let's see how he does with the next 2 films. I might be wrong though, so. But still, I want that same magic and the music that John Williams brought, and I'm hoping that magical feeling that John Williams brought returns in the musical scores for the next 2 Harry Potter movies. Fingers crossed, because I think it might make these films better if they had slightly better musical scores. But that's just me. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on this film as a whole. I enjoyed it. It felt like the calm before the storm, and even though I do think it could have felt more like the calm before the storm, it felt like the calm before the storm enough that I was able to just... It felt like these characters last time as kids. It felt like in the next 2 films they're going to be adults. And it felt like their last time at Hogwarts. And I just really enjoyed that about it. And I really enjoyed watching these characters. This film made me realise how much I had invested into these characters and how much I actually enjoyed watching their lives progress throughout all 6 of these films. This film made me realise that. I don't totally know how it did that, but it did, and I thought it looked great. I thought the visuals were very good. The CGI didn't really bother me either, which is something I have been very nitpicky with over my views of the past 2 Harry Potter movies, or the past couple of Harry Potter movies even. I criticised that with Prisoner of Azkaban as well. Yeah, the CGI didn't bother me in this film. There were some ropey moments, but you know, it was a movie made in, 2007 or 2008? It was made over 10, 15, maybe 15 years ago. I'm terrible at maths. So anyway, yeah, the CGI didn't really bother me. I found it to be funny at times, and I liked that the comedy returned in there. I liked that the film had a dark edge to it, and you felt the dark edge. I thought it was better directed than the previous film, even though it was made by the same director. And there's just a lot about it which I really enjoyed. I didn't really enjoy the film overall, and I do think it had some inconsequential parts to it, and I would have liked there to be more of a narrative thrust going on throughout this film. I would have liked there to be some more cutting back and forth between the good guys and the bad guys. Instead, I think this film focused a lot more on the good guys. Nevertheless, in the end, I liked it. I liked this film, which is saying quite a bit after the last film, because I was thinking after the last film it's going to be a push to finish this franchise. But actually, I'm looking forward to the next film now. Like I was after Philosopher's Stone, like I was after Chamber of Secrets, like I was after Prisoner of Azkaban, like I was after Goblet of Fire. I'm now looking forward to watching the next Harry Potter movie. And I missed that feeling from, Order of Phoenix. But I got it back here. I got it back with Half-Blood Prince. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, I'm going to say it's a 7 out of 10. Yeah, it's enjoyable. I liked it. I thought it was a good film and a worthwhile watch, particularly with that ending and the whole mystery surrounding the Half-Blood Prince. I really liked that. I really liked how this film delved into that, and it actually made it compelling. I thought the writing of the film was much better again than Order of the Phoenix. Again, I didn't hate Order of the Phoenix. It was just watching this film made me realise what I was missing from Order of the Phoenix. I will say that there were some parts of the film which felt a little like only fans would understand. Like, I really liked how this film focused on the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore, but I didn't understand the point of them when they're at this stormy cave at one point in the film. I didn't quite understand what they were doing there in the film, because it wasn't made clear to me. Although I liked how this film focused on the relationship between Harry and Dumbledore, and then when you see Dumbledore die, it did make it more emotionally affecting. I think it could have been more emotionally affecting, again, if there was a greater narrative thrust, and they were cutting back and forth between the good guys and the bad guys, which I think is where the film could have improved and maybe been brilliant, but they didn't do that, and instead they just focused mainly on the good guys, and in doing so, it felt like the last film where, the main 3 characters were the main characters overall, not just the main 3 characters, but it felt like the main characters that we've been following since Philosopher's Stone were still kids. It felt like this was the end of their adolescent life. I don't know if that's the case. I generally don't know, if in the next film they return to Hogwarts. I can't remember, but this is the film where it felt like it was the end of their journey at Hogwarts as students. and that was something I really liked about it, and it made me realise how much I've actually been enjoying watching their performances and how much I've been enjoying watching these characters. And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more, I enjoyed Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And so, for that reason, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, then please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe it's your favourite Harry Potter movie, or maybe it's your least favourite Harry Potter film. Whatever your thoughts are on this film, please let me know in the comment section below, and look forward to my review of what's the next one, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the beginning of the end to this film series, coming very soon on this channel. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast, and look forward to many more podcasts coming very soon on this channel. As what he said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose that's it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.